Before there was an octagon, before there were global fight leagues and viral knockout reels, there was a man. A philosopher. A warrior. A legend. Bruce Lee didn't just change martial arts, he reinvented the very idea of what a fighter could be. This is the story of how one man's journey sparked a fire that would inspire generations of fighters, forever. Born in San Francisco in 1940, Lee Junfan, better known as Bruce Lee, was destined for greatness. But destiny never comes easy. Raised in Hong Kong, Bruce grew up amid gang violence, poverty, and unrest. By age 13, he had already seen too much. But what set him apart was what he did with that experience. He began training in Wing Chun under the legendary Ip Man, not just learning how to fight, but how to think, move, and evolve. At the time, martial arts was cloaked in tradition. Stiff. Rigid. Bound by style. But Bruce was a storm waiting to happen. Returning to the U.S. as a teenager, Bruce enrolled in university, studying philosophy. But don't mistake his academics for weakness. His mind was a weapon. He began teaching martial arts, creating his own philosophy, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. This wasn't just a fighting style. It was freedom. He believed no one should be bound by tradition. No stance too sacred. No punch too holy. If it worked, it stayed. If not, it was discarded. That idea would change everything. In 1960s America, Asian men were typecast. Servants. Villains. Joke characters. Bruce walked into Hollywood with fists clenched, not to fight on screen, but to fight for the screen. When he wasn't cast as the lead in Kung Fu, a show based on his own idea, it would have broken a lesser man. But not Bruce. Instead, he went back to Hong Kong and became a superstar. The Big Boss. Fist of Fury. Way of the Dragon, these weren't just films, they were revolutions. When he returned to America with Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee became a global icon. He didn't just open doors. He kicked them down. Behind the scenes, Bruce was already changing lives. He trained some of the biggest names in the West. Steve McQueen. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. James Coburn. He wasn't just teaching them to fight. He was teaching them to be aware, precise, unafraid. One kick. One punch. One soul. His students became warriors in their own way. But none could match the fire that was Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was more than just a martial artist. He was a revolutionary force that changed the world's understanding of physical potential, philosophy, and cultural pride. His legacy, cemented by discipline, brilliance, and a relentless drive to improve, has transcended time and geography. To truly understand the depth of Bruce Lee's impact, one must look beyond the flashy kicks and cinematic punches and dive into the story of a man who reshaped how the world sees strength, identity, and the martial spirit. Born in San Francisco in 1940 and raised in Hong Kong, Bruce was a child actor in the vibrant local film scene. But his destiny wasn't confined to the silver screen. As a teenager, he found himself drawn to the streets, often involved in fights, leading his parents to steer him toward martial arts for discipline. It was under the guidance of the legendary Ip Man that Bruce began his journey into Wing Chun, a form of Chinese kung fu rooted in precision, fluidity, and control. But even at a young age, Bruce Lee was never content with limitations. He questioned traditions, reevaluated techniques, and sought to create something unique. When he returned to the United States as a young adult, he began sharing his martial arts knowledge, blending traditional techniques with innovations inspired by boxing, fencing, and even philosophy. This hybrid style eventually evolved into what he called Jeet Kune Do, or the way of the intercepting fist. Jeet Kune Do wasn't just a martial arts style, it was a philosophy. It taught fighters to be like water, adaptable, fluid, and powerful. Bruce believed that martial arts should be practical, efficient, and tailored to the individual. He broke away from rigid systems and emphasized personal expression. His ideas were revolutionary in a martial arts world often bound by tradition. In Hollywood, Bruce Lee faced rejection and racism. Despite his charisma, talent, and expertise, he was often sidelined for being Asian in an industry that preferred white actors to play Asian roles. The frustration fueled his drive. He knew his worth, and he refused to let a prejudiced system define him. When he created The Green Hornet, Bruce introduced Western audiences to real martial arts choreography. Unlike the exaggerated, stiff fights of the time, Bruce moved with speed, fluidity, and raw intensity. His performance as Kato became iconic, even though the show didn't last long. But Bruce didn't stop. Unable to land leading roles in the U.S., Bruce returned to Hong Kong, where he was welcomed as a hero. There, he starred in a series of blockbuster films like The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, and Way of the Dragon. These movies weren't just action-packed, they carried messages of resistance, cultural pride, and personal transformation. In Fist of Fury, for example, Bruce portrayed a man who stood against foreign oppressors, a theme that resonated deeply with audiences across Asia. He symbolized the strength of a people who had long been marginalized. His battles were cinematic metaphors for reclaiming identity and dignity. Perhaps his most groundbreaking film was Enter the Dragon, a Hollywood-Hong Kong co-production that catapulted Bruce Lee into global superstardom. The film showcased not just Bruce's fighting prowess but his charisma, intelligence, and philosophy. Tragically, he didn't live to see its release, passing away in 1973 at just 32. Yet his death did not mark the end, it was the beginning of a legend. Bruce Lee became a symbol. His books, films, and teachings began inspiring generations of martial artists, athletes, actors, and thinkers. He showed that true mastery wasn't about technique alone but about inner growth, discipline, and authenticity. Around the world, dojos and gyms began integrating Bruce's principles. Mixed martial arts, MMA, as we know it today, owes a great debt to Bruce's vision. He believed in using what works, discarding what doesn't, and constantly evolving. These are the foundations of modern combat sports. Fighters like Anderson Silva, Georges St-Pierre, and John Jones have cited Bruce Lee as a direct influence. They didn't just copy his moves, they absorbed his mindset. The idea that a fighter should be both a warrior and a philosopher became widespread, thanks to Bruce. His influence goes beyond sports. In music, hip-hop artists referenced his style and spirit. In fashion, his iconic yellow tracksuit became a symbol of rebellion and cool. In academia, his writings are studied for their philosophical depth, merging Eastern and Western thought. For Asian Americans and Asians worldwide, Bruce Lee became a beacon of representation. At a time when Asian characters were caricatures or villains, Bruce portrayed strength, honor, and complexity. He was proud of his heritage and demanded that others respect it too. Bruce Lee also redefined masculinity. He showed that vulnerability, reflection, and intellect were not signs of weakness but of maturity and strength. He encouraged people to know themselves, to seek truth in their own way, and to always be learning. Even today, his legacy lives on in every young martial artist who picks up gloves for the first time, in every child who mimics his moves in front of a mirror, and in every person who chooses to fight for their identity, dignity, and dreams. Bruce Lee's message was simple yet profound: absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own. He was a fighter in every sense of the word, not just in the ring or on screen, but in life. He fought for representation, for self-expression, and for human potential. And in doing so, he didn't just inspire fighters, he inspired a movement. Today, as we look back on his life and work, Bruce Lee remains not just a man of his time, but a man for all time. His story is not just a martial arts tale, it's a human story. One of struggle, breakthrough, creativity, and purpose. From dusty gyms to massive stadiums, from movie sets to meditation rooms, Bruce Lee's spirit lingers, reminding us to be fearless, to be fluid, and above all, to be ourselves. That is his true legacy. In 1973, at just 32 years old, Bruce Lee died suddenly. Shockwaves rippled across the world. A storm silenced before it peaked. But in death, Bruce Lee became something greater than a man. He became a myth, a blueprint, a beacon. From MMA fighters like Georges St-Pierre, John Jones, and Anderson Silva, to karate legends like Lyoto Machida, to taekwondo masters and even Olympic athletes,